Good evening, Daniel.
Lee Austin.
Hey! How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Man, I can hear you fine. You sound great.
Terrific.
What is going on over there?
Not too much. Are we on the air? Do I need to behave like an adult now?
Yes, you do. Because if you don't, then some seriously bad things could happen.
Well, I'm going to behave like an adult. Good evening, Daniel. Thank you for letting me on the show. Great to be on. Looking forward to the conversation.
Excellent, excellent. You know, our bio of you says that you were connected with Outlaw Radio. Now you realize I'm wearing a white hat. So, you know, a lot of times we'll get into it with your outlaws, man.
Well, here's the deal. It was Outcast Radio, but I've done radio in Texas for over 25 years. So without a doubt, I'm familiar with the look and I love it.
All right, welcome to the program. I tell you what, we're going to be talking about your book, Morning Star Tale, Mysteries of the Universe. You know what? One of the things that we love talking about in this show is mysteries, and you're deep in it. I like the way you write it. You push the existential envelope. Now, you realize doing that can really put you in disfavor with some folks.
Well, that's kind of what I was hoping would happen. And since the book was released end of September, early October, I have put myself in a lot of hot water, which is an environment I'm very comfortable with.
Well, I have to say the same thing about myself, man. I mean, it depends on what the guest says. You know, this is a freewheeling program, and I don't really put, you know. Select guests for my point of view. I select guests particularly really for views that are not in the mainstream. Because I'll tell you what, if we're bored to death, you go mainstream. But and it seems to me the facts kind of reside on the other side anyway. And I've always got this thing, Lee, that I believe if somebody tells you something, if the news report tells you something, believe the exact opposite and then work your way back. Don't believe them and disprove it. Just assume it's 180 degrees what they just told you.
Well, and I'll give you a great example of that, Daniel. I just wrote a story for Before It's News a couple of days ago. NASA makes an announcement that in the year 2024, they plan on landing an unmanned spacecraft on the moon. And when I read that headline, I couldn't help but laughing because I'm thinking, do you guys even know what you allegedly did 50 years ago? I mean, you allegedly put a man on the moon 50 years ago, and now you're projecting that perhaps you can land a vehicle without a man on the moon in another 5 years. Are we just working backwards here?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, Lee. They lost all the schematics to the spacesuit and air conditioning devices, and they lost the plans for the rocket that supposedly landed the thing. I mean, it's just amazing how they just lost all the evidence. So maybe they got to start all over. It seems like that's what their excuse is.
Well, that is exactly their excuse. If you go to YouTube, you could find one of the heads of the agency who said he would love to go back to the moon in a nanosecond, except we destroyed all of that technology. And I'm literally falling out of my chair laughing, thinking, really? That's the best you guys can come up with in your marketing department?
That's kind of convenient. It's almost like deleting emails off a server, man. You know, so, well, it was in there, but now it's not. So now, we got to do something else. But the way information is massaged that comes to the public, I'm sure you may have seen on the YouTube. There's somebody says, "Watch this," and it has 50 different newscasters saying the exact same thing.
Yes.
And
yes.
And that's no coincidence. This is like they're just rolling out the mass communication to get everyone to get into that group think so that they don't use their own mindset. But if multiple sources have said it, then it must be true. Well, that's how they operate.
Whether you like Donald Trump or you don't, he did hit the nail on the head when he started talking about fake news, because all they do literally is regurgitate the same thing. And I've seen those clips where they literally will say the same thing off the teleprompter on every local newscast across America. And when you think about it, only 6 corporations own 90% of the media in this country. And what you are doing and what I am doing right now is so out of the norm, unscripted, seeking the truth, that it really has a tangible substance to it. And people are going, maybe there is something to this, because it seems like they're just speaking from their heart.
Well, if you want to know who's dangerous to the corporation, just look to see who Twitter bans, who Facebook bans, who YouTube bans. Those are, I would say, literally, those would be the purveyors of truth, because those inconvenient truths that they are letting out the public. Initially they. And here's my point of view, and I will maybe get your opinion on it too. Everybody's got a cell phone now, so everybody's almost addicted to the thing. You got Facebook. Everybody's got, a lot of people got Facebook. In the beginning, they did. It was MySpace and Facebook, blah blah blah. And so these different social formats, and it's really cool, and you're interacting, and things are going great. They're building up your addiction, so to speak. And then once everybody's on it, that was the intent. Once they got everybody locked on it, it's so easy to send a message out, just like a tweet. Send it all out to everyone at the same time. Only this case here, they're able to find the opposing views, delete those. I mean, they really we all just walked into a digital FEMA camp.
Well, you think about Stalin and Hitler and the Nazis, they would have loved this technology, a few decades ago, to get everybody in the matrix and know exactly who your enemies are before you even go after them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, another great example, Daniel, I was watching a clip from Joe Rogan's podcast, and he had the CEO of Twitter on, and Rogan had asked the CEO of Twitter why specifically he, or the corporation that he represents, banned Alex Jones, and he didn't know. I mean, if that doesn't speak volumes in and of itself, that the CEO of Twitter doesn't even know why they banned one of the biggest alternative voices in the media, again, whether you like Alex Jones or not, that shows and speaks volumes as to the matrix that we are all suppressed under.
And again, I didn't research at all any of your political views or anything like that at all, Lee. So whatever you're telling me, it's not because, if we are in agreement on anything, it's not, I didn't have you on show for that, but if it happens to be so, then so be it. But I would say this about sort of the abortion end of this, which is seemingly up front and central, that as they begin to roll out this baby on the table murder situation, now of course they're rolling into that assisted suicide, and after that it's going to be babies with anomalies or disabilities of some sort. Eventually they're going to get around to wherever we are, and that's the same thing, kind of what you just said, is that they start with an innocuous group like an Alex Jones. He's a nut. Have you ever seen this guy? We can put some clips together, him screaming, we're putting underwear on his head. Surely you don't want that guy out there. Well, next thing you know, they're banning other conservatives that aren't even near that conspiracy theory minded, or no conspiracy at all. And so they'll eventually get to those who maybe question it's coming. It is coming to those who think it's not coming to them. It is coming to them.
It's interesting because I did stand-up comedy in Los Angeles for 3 years in my early 20s. And you take a guy like Owen Benjamin. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's really stirring it up, because today's comedians are under more scrutiny than probably any group, even more so than alternative talk show hosts, because a comedian, more than any other person, I believe, really speaks the truth. And when you get to the heart of the truth, there's a tremendous amount of humor in it. And look at all the comedians that have been banned. You have the Academy Awards where nobody even wants to host it because they know it's career suicide. And so now we live in this society where everyone is afraid to say anything for fear of retribution, and again, their career being put on the rails for the rest of their life.
Absolutely true. And then they really can, they're being herded into the only allowable jokes is against Christians or Trumpans or, the right or whatever. Those are the only allowable jokes. That's where we are right now. They're not funny. I mean, it's like, okay, heard enough Trump jokes. Is there anybody else in the world? Anybody else in the world? Where are the AOC jokes? Well, of course, the AOC jokes, she single-handedly eliminated blonde jokes by herself. I mean, she's given so much material for comedians. A bunch of people could make a career out of just doing some show on her. But, back in the 90s, Lee, remember, did you ever see a show called In Living Color?
Oh, I loved In Living Color.
I mean, you talking about you had men on film. You had a homeless guy walking around with a poop in a jar. You had they were against. They would mock gays. They would mock blacks. They would mock Christians. They would mock whites. I mean, they were. It was a freewheeling program. And I tell you what, if they were to put any of those shows, and they were put on by the Wayans. The Wayans all black. But if they were to put that show today, there would be arrests made.
Well, think about this. Let's go back even further, and I can tell by your picture you're going to identify with me on this one. Let's go back to All in the Family back in the 70s. Archie Bunker, stereotypical white racist. So what does Norman Lear do? Brilliantly, he comes up with a show called The Jeffersons with a black guy who's a racist. And they have both of the shows back to back, and it's 1 hour of pure hilarity because people go, I know a guy like that. I know a guy like that. Boy, that's true. And you don't hear any of that today because really, when you think about it, we are living in a fascist country right now where everyone is afraid to say anything for fear of the repercussions. And again, in Living Color was a great show. I remember the bit Fire Marshal Bill.
Let me tell you something.
Brothers. And how about Homie the Clown? I love that bit. Yeah. A politically incorrect clown. I mean, he was like the Antichrist of Ronald McDonald.
Homie don't play that. Right, he said, homie don't play that. Then he hit you in the back of the head.
That's right. It was great. And I work with a bunch of millennials in my regular job, and they have no idea when I talk about stuff like Living Color and what life was like even 20 years ago and how we have just lost our sense of humor as a nation. And in return, we've gotten this nice light fascism.
Well, and you have what's going on in Virginia with the governor and the blackface, and then various other people, even comedians. I mean, it seemed to me that was a regular slick for comedians at some point, and there's even blacks that did white faces, But as much as they're going after him for that, in some way, I wish they would. I mean, Al Jolson made a career out of that, and it was funny stuff back then. Back then it was different culture. Even in the 80s, I don't know why we hold people accountable to a different time. Say, well, you're guilty. You were guilty back then, but you weren't charged. So now we're going to charge you today. And that would even a rule or a law or political correctness. But, his side basically has created that atmosphere. His side is the one that says is promoting the politically correct. And it isn't, nobody can be funny. Nobody can tell a joke. I mean, if you have something in your past, you're going to lose everything because of it. It's a world, it's a dystopian world that is really, it's just sucking the life out of people.
Well, and I've thought of an interesting idea on a comedy bit. I was going to call it the magic vagina because it appears that once the head gets out of the woman, then it's a person, but there's some sort of magic that occurs in the idea that you can literally butcher a living human being. Reminds me of the days of Israel with Moloch and child sacrifices. There's very little difference, except we've got 24/7 news cycles to cover it.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, that goes on to the, I wasn't involved with the Roe versus Wade thing in the 70s, and I'm actually considering putting together an interview, so to speak, of somebody arriving in heaven, and St. Pete asked the person, I guess they're down there murdering babies. What did you do? I just, I did what I was supposed to do. I just kept silent, and he's going to say, where'd you hear that from? And he'll say, well, did you write it? Did you write a tweet? Did you put a Facebook post in there? Did you make a YouTube video? How did you protest? Well, I didn't, and I think now we have all those tools, so at least people can speak out, at least right now. But I would imagine the algorithm's going to wipe out that speech soon. But, and I'll tell you what, Lee, I put a Facebook post up. It said, headline news, babies are now being able to be murdered outside of the womb. And then it goes, thank you for your attention. You may now return to your funny cat videos. So, hey, would that kind of comedy work for you?
Yeah. It's interesting when getting to the book, I really believe that God put it on my heart to write a book because at some point a tangible substance might be all we have left. I mean, you think about how we're all subjected to the algorithms of YouTube, Google, but with a book, a literal paper book, it can't be destroyed unless they tear it from your hands, and they can be hidden. And I almost feel in some way that God led me to write a book about all of this, because at some point that might be the only form of communication that's pure.
Mm-hmm. Then, of course, now as we roll along here, that instantly triggered a movie or a episode of The Twilight Zone where the librarian was called before the state because he wanted to read books. And, he said, books are obsolete. And he said, you're obsolete. In fact, I think it was called The Obsolete Man. So, at some point, and of course they go on, and that's one of the best episodes Twilight Zone ever made. The state says, we have proven there is no God, and therefore you are obsolete. And, so I'm glad there are still books out there, but I can see they would interfere because there are a massive amount of books out there that are politically incorrect or that are from a different time when there was common sense. And I would imagine at some point, and probably even now we don't even know it, they're probably disappearing from library shelves. Somebody has already made eliminate a book list. I know they have.
I was just thinking about that episode, and I've seen it. I remember, I forget the guy's name. I think he was
Burgess Meredith.
Yeah, Burgess Meredith. He was the one in Rocky who said, "You're a bum." But yeah, in that episode, they asked him what he was, and he said a librarian, and everyone in the room laughed at him. Mm-hmm. And that's what's coming down the road when you start talking about the fact that you believe that post-birth abortions, quote unquote, is murder. You're going to be the kook. Mm-hmm. They're going to call darkness light, and they're going to call light darkness, and it's coming a lot quicker than I think we realize. You think about something like the Internet of Things, where they literally are going to connect every physical object to the internet so that even when you're walking down the sidewalk, they know it's you. This is coming, and that's what that 5G mm-hmm. network is all about. They need that kind of bandwidth to get everything, literally quadrillions of material substances and objects onto the internet, and it's going to be through this wonderful mm-hmm. tube of the internet, this wonderful mm-hmm. tool of the internet, that they're actually going to build this beast machine. I really believe mm-hmm. that's where this is ultimately going.
And in some of the information describing you and what you talk about, the existential envelope of metaphysics, it reminded me of quantum mechanics. That the D-wave quantum computer, as people in the show have heard me talk about, the person that invented it, so to speak, was said to have said about it that it was being next to that D-wave computer. It not only seemingly had a heartbeat by the cooling system, but he said he feels like he's standing at the altar of an alien god. That god of AI is coming. Of course, the 5G network is a critical component for that. And so, we talk about how quickly it's coming, Lee. Well, people how quickly things can come. Just look at it. As soon as the Democrats took over the House, 1 week later, we have babies being thrown off the birth table into a garbage can. 1 week later, 2 weeks later, we have assisted suicide rolling through. 3 weeks later, we have the conscience clause, where a doctor doesn't want to do it, is now criminalized for his conscious objection. That happened in a space of 3 weeks. So don't think they're not going to throw out those FEMA camps, and people are not going to have the time, they think, to prepare. They're not going to have time to protest. They're not going to have time to resist when it comes down. That infrastructure is coming hard and fast.
It's the same thing with vaccines. Think of all the doctors and nurses that are losing their jobs because they know that these injections lead to autism. And you take a movie like Vax, which was relegated, again, like my book, they say, to the dustbin of obscurity. And getting back to the quantum computers, the easiest way to understand this for me is that right now with binary computers, you have ones and zeros, and it's all on a silicon chip. With qubits, they literally can change the composition because it's computing on an atomic level. And that, when you take a D-wave computer and integrate that with an unlimited band 5G, you're able to get this Internet of Things and everything literally into one machine. And if you go to Scripture, way in the back, in the book of Revelation, the idea of giving life to image of the beast, perhaps that will be part of this D-wave computer, where, as we both know, Satan can't be everywhere. He's not omnipresent.
Hmm.
But if he has access to a machine that can do that, then he would have control over the entire earth. And that ties in with Project Bluebeam and all this other crazy stuff that's on the horizon.
Well, yeah, on that 5G network, we talk about vaccines. I already have seen that that I believe it's YouTube that is, and I think maybe Facebook too. They've already said their algorithms are going to start eliminating conspiracy theories. That vaccine thing is what they consider conspiracy theories, even though all the autism stats show a direct correlation between vaccine injection and autism. And of course, other people said their babies killed or their children died right after they took the vaccine. These things, and the one of the specific ones is vaccine, the anti-vacciners, and they're also talking about the climate change deniers. So they're trying to eliminate every voice that is against or questions the system.
Here's the precursor I use whenever I have a quote unquote conspiratorial conversation with anyone. We look up in the sky, I see the sky loaded with chemtrails, and we begin the discussion. Okay, are those chemtrails or are those contrails?
Mm-hmm.
And if they are adamant that they're contrails, after I thoroughly explain how a chemtrail is comprised of barium and aluminum, and it spreads and it diffuses the sky, those are not ice crystals. I live in Florida, it's 90 degrees. If you think those are ice crystals, we certainly are not going to talk about flat Earth, 5G, and all this other stuff. Because if you look at a conspiracy theory like that, and you still think those are contrails, we're not having a conversation.
Right. I mean, the proof is right there in front of your face. The other thing is sort of like this, and I have a tendency to take these political euphemisms, but about a month or so ago, Michelle Obama wore this big, massive, yellow-looking, skanky dress with these nasty-looking, snake-looking boots, and the fashionistas of the world said, "Oh, look, this is the most beautiful thing ever." She made the cover of Vogue. I don't know how many times. Melania Trump's not made the cover of any magazine, and it's like. It's about as stupid as saying when Obama said, "Hey, your low gas prices, I set that in motion. With my great economic skills, man. It's like they're telling you stuff that is blatantly, factually, and right in front of your face, wrong, and saying this is the way it is. They feel like it seems like that's some sort of Nazi tenet where you proclaim a lie that's so obviously a lie and stupid, and telling you're the one that's crazy for not seeing what we're telling you it is."
I reread 1984 by Orwell about 3 years ago, and it's never been more true than it is now. War is peace, ignorance is education. When they can have you look at the sky and convince you that those are ice crystals and not chemtrails, and you don't see the weather modification right in front of your nose, then you know that most people are going to be compliant. And when they're threatened with all of these other repercussions, you know that these people will willingly, like sheep, go off to these camps.
Mm-hmm. No, they will willingly. You mentioned Revelation, I believe it was Revelation 13:15, and the quote on that is, "And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, and the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image of the beast to be killed." And you could put it into the D-Wave computer, artificial intelligence. At some point, Lee, I believe this system will speak, and whether it's an audible voice but what I'm seeing in that scripture is saying that we will give power over our lives to something. And everything that's coming our way is saying that AI will run your life soon. And it says people will willingly give this power to them. And that's where all the systems are going to. And so that, to me, that's just the ultimate in prophecy coming true.
Well, I think it's time, Daniel, you and I jump down the rabbit hole. So it's going to get even stranger. So hang on if you're listening to the show. I believe, and this is just my own belief, but I want to share it with you and get your take on it. And it's something I've come to believe in the last year or two. I believe that the Antichrist, in fact, is going to be a hybrid. Because if you go back into Genesis and you study, I think it's Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, and it talks about the Watcher angels coming down to Earth, having sex with women, and creating a race of Nephilim giants, and then the Lord flooding the Earth to get rid of these hybrids. I believe that the Antichrist, Apollo, as he rises from the abyss, is in fact going to be a hybrid. And in Scripture, where it talks about him coming back to life, an assassination attempt, I believe that is going to be the event where he demands, and the image of the beast demands, that everyone gets a mark on their hand, because he's going to have a false or real, I think, false resurrection. And he's going to say, look, if you want to be a transhuman like me, if you want to ascend to godhood, then you take this chip, because what this chip is going to do is it's going to fundamentally change your DNA from a double helix to a triple helix, and you will now reflect my image of the light bearer, because I came to bring light, I came to bring knowledge, and it is the demiurge, the other God, the Ancient of Days, who is the villain in this. He is God, I am God, but I am the good God. Take this mark, it'll change your DNA, you will become an eternal being like me, you will be a transhuman, you will receive eternal life without having to go through all of the hoops that the Ancient of Days requires. And I believe that has to do with panspermia. And when you see movies like Prometheus, it is programming the world to get ready for our quote-unquote engineers, gods, to come back and show us who they are and why they created us.
Well, isn't China already genetically engineering their kids?
Yeah, they are. And they're way ahead of us. But I believe in labs all across the world right now. They are literally, it grieves God's heart, like you were talking about with abortion. I believe that they're producing chimeras, which are hybrid human animals, and they are working 24/7 to somehow avoid the judgment of God. When you think about it, the wages of sin are death, if you're a believer, and I am. If the wages of sin are death, and if you can somehow circumvent death, in other words, if you can become a transhuman, achieve the singularity, eternal life, apart from God and his requirement of going through Jesus Christ, then you are God, I am God, and the God of the Bible is fiction. And we are the new gods. And that's what this new age, that's what the singularity, and that's what transhumanism is all about, achieving godhood without having to go through the Ancient of Days and avoiding the wages of sin, which is death.
I just read a comment in one of our chats. As you know, we have two chats, one on our website, one on our YouTube streaming channel, which we're actually simulcasting from our website, YouTube channel, and then we're streaming the audio on our TuneIn radio program. But Doug White said that perhaps the mark in the forehead is more of an attitude change, a brainwashing, so to speak, because your forehead obviously would represent your brain. What do you think about that? That you've been given over in your thinking, and that is the mark.
Well, think about this. There's another scripture in Revelation where it talks about, for a period of 5 months, man will seek death, but he will not find it. And I always found that scripture confounding until I really began a deep dive on transhumanism. Think about this. If you become eternal apart from God, if you truly do reflect Lucifer's image, the light bearer, and your DNA is systematically changed, then perhaps not only is your body changed, but your mind is changed. And this gets into another term called the hive mind. And I think the listener is absolutely right. I think what's going to happen is that everyone that takes this mark, whether it's in your hand or it's in your forehead, are going to reflect the thoughts of Lucifer, and that he will literally be in your head, and literally you will be possessed by the light bearer. He will not only be in your hand or on your forehead, he will be in your mind and in your heart, and you will think like him and you will be like him. So yeah, I agree with the listener.
Now, I know we're getting right to the top of the hour. We'll take a 5-minute break, but Lee, let me ask you this question real quick. Can any of this happen against somebody's will?
No. And it's the same thing with deliverance. If somebody goes through deliverance and they don't want the deliverance, they will not be delivered of a demon that's inside them. And it's the same thing with this chip. You will not have that injected against your will. There are rules to the game, and Lucifer/Satan has to follow the rules. And one of the rules is, and I believe this with all my heart, is that it is of your own free will. Nobody will be cast into the pit of their own. It has to be a choice, and if you don't make that choice, you've made the choice for Lucifer.
All right, Lee Austin, we have you. We're going to go to a 5-minute break. Before we do, I have your book that you wrote, Morning Star's Tale. Where can people get that book, and give us a brief oversight of it?
Okay, the book itself is only 80 pages long, and the reason being is I'm trying to market it to millennials because it shows that the millennials, more than any other generation, are open to all of these conspiracy theories because they have access to YouTube and the internet. It's making a world of difference. The book is available at Amazon. It's available at Barnes & Noble, Smashwords, and a couple of other sources. I've also got a website called morningstarstale.com. You can go there. There's a link to my publisher. But if you can just remember Morning Star's Tale, available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, you should be able to find it. It's available in Kindle, and I would suggest getting a hardback copy just in case the Kindle goes away at some point.
All right, Lee, we're going to go even deeper in the second hour, so just mute your mic. We'll be back with you in 5 minutes. Now let's go back to our newsmaker line, and welcome back, Lee Austin. Lee, welcome back.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate it.
Well, it's good to have you back. I don't know if we went deep enough. First of all, if you're going to talk conspiracy, we got to know, is the Earth flat?
Yes.
Okay.
And when I say that, Daniel, it still sounds weird. I got to tell you, I believe it is, but even when the word comes out of my mouth, in spite of everything that's occurred in the last 3 years to get to this point, I understand why people think it's a crazy statement, but I think I can do a pretty good job of proving it, but then it takes about a year to get on the other side of the matrix.
All right, there goes half of our listeners. But hey, man, I would say if I was them, I would stay and watch this train wreck coming here because, hey, again, what I said in the first hour still stands. If somebody tells you the Earth is, if the media says the Earth is round, you got to think 180 because that's the way they operate, man. So we got to apply that to this theorem here. They've been lying to us for years, saying that this is some kind of globe hanging out there in space, just ripping around at 5,000 miles an hour. Nobody knows why we're not getting thrown off like a merry-go-round, get thrown off into space, kind of like in the movie Armageddon where there was no gravity and the guy he made a jump and off he goes, right, and floating off in space, and they go bye. So I mean, yeah. Tell us, give us your best shot on this flat Earth.
Okay, first of all, in Morning Star's Tale, Lucifer is the narrator. And I decided that I wanted someone who was arrogant, condescending, incredibly intelligent, charismatic to bring this message.
And Obama wasn't available. Hey, that's pretty good. That's good timing. Hey, you're a comedian. Was that good delivery right there?
Try the veal. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel will be here all weekend, and please tip your waitresses.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, here we go. Hang on to your hat. I'm going to work backwards, which most Earth flatters don't do. Number one, I used the Book of Enoch along with the Bible, and once I started reading the Book of Enoch, which I've read about 5 times, my noodle was cooked. Let me just give you some numbers that they... and by they, I mean NASA has given you, not you, Daniel, but the sheep. Okay, first of all, NASA says the following. The moon is 400 times smaller than the sun. And yet by a wonderful coincidence, the moon is 400 times away from the sun. And that is why the moon and the sun appear to be the same size in the sky. In the Book of Enoch, Enoch talks about the fact that the moon and the sun are the same size and look the same size because they are the same size. The other thing that really threw me was the moon. In all of my years, I could never understand the moon phases. For example, when you see the moon half lit, 50% is light, 50% is dark. What is causing that other half to be dark, and why is there a perfectly straight line between the light and the darkness? What's causing that? I know they'll say that, okay, maybe the Earth is casting its shadow when you see a quarter moon or a sliver of a moon, but when the moon is half lit, why is that a perfectly fine, defined line, half lit, half not? And the reason, according to the book of Enoch, is that the sun pours its light into the moon over a 14-day period. It then is fully lit, what we call a full moon, and then over the next 14 days, it loses a 14th of its light and then becomes a new moon. And this process continues ad infinitum. The next question is, all right, who's doing that? God is doing that. The angels are doing that. We live in an enclosed dome. We are extremely important. We are extremely special to God. The heliocentric model says that you are insignificant, that you live on a ball that is rotating at 1,000 miles an hour, traveling around the sun at 66,000 miles an hour, and the Milky Way expanding at 486,000 miles per hour. In order to believe in the heliocentric theory, you need to have a lot more faith than I do in the flat earth theory. I believe that we live on a flat plane under an enclosed dome, and above us is an ocean. Why do I believe that? I do. I do.
Now, wait. What now?
We live on a flat plane and a sea firmament, a firmament dome above us. And the stars and the planets are not what they seem to be. They're actually the result of sound. Sound produces light. Tesla was actually correct. He said, if you want to know the secrets of the universe, look to sound, frequency. I know I'm going way down the rabbit hole, and I just threw a ton of meat at everybody.
Oh, sure did.
But that's me saying this. And who am I? I'm a nobody. But that's why I wrote the book from the point of view of Lucifer, because I knew that the person delivering this message had to deliver it with confidence and arrogance and disdain, because I'm not going to try to convince anyone tonight that the earth is flat, because the first time I heard it, I thought it was nuts. And it took me a year to finally come around. And it cost me a radio job. I had a network job in the Austin area, and I was doing conspiratorial radio, kind of like what you're doing. But once I started talking about this subject, I was out the door.
Have you heard of a YouTube sensation called the Boogeyman?
No, I have not.
All right. Well, you're in safe territory, because he's come to the same conclusion by most aspects that the whether or not, I don't know if he's flat Earth, but he certainly is. The stars and the moon are, and the sun, for that matter, are not what we've been told that they are. But I mean, there is a little question I have about the Chinese who said they landed on the dark side of the moon and they took pictures. Man, I'm wondering, where'd the light come from? I mean, is there another?
Did you ever listen to Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon?
Well,
it's all dark.
Well, they've been there too. But I'm just saying, is there another sun? Is there another sun behind the moon that we don't see? I don't know.
Well, let me ask you some questions. And I know, and I'm not doing this to paint you into a corner.
Oh, sure.
I'm doing this because these are the questions I asked, and I just want to plant a seed.
Okay.
That's what I
All right,
do.
let's go. Let's do it.
Okay. Why do we only see one side of the moon? What have you been told, and what do you believe on that?
Okay, Lee, what we have here, you've got a moon, and it's up yonder there. It's just sitting there. Now, it's in geosynchronous orbit. It doesn't move, so therefore, it's not rotating. So you always see the same side.
That's what I've been told. And that's what I believe for 59 years of my life.
It never rotates.
I actually believe. Okay, let's take another step backwards. Do you believe that man has been to the moon?
Okay, all right, you got me there. I'm a non-lander. I'm a non-lander, man.
Okay, man, it's okay.
Okay,
it's
thank you.
I'm going to give you the introductory tinfoil hat. We'll just make it in the form of a baseball cap for now.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, why do you believe that we haven't been to the moon? What's your evidence? And I know we've only got 45 minutes left, so we'll keep everything short. But I'm just curious. Why do you think we weren't to the moon? What evidence do you have?
Okay, my best shot. Here we go. There's something called the Van Allen radiation belt. which Russian scientists claimed would fry anything that goes through there. And you'd have to have a 2-foot wall sheet of lead surrounding your vehicle to get through it. That's number one. Number two, they barely invented the transistor back then, and to get the telemetry and the technology to launch a vehicle from Earth to the moon, drop a lander, have that lander shoot off, hit the mothership going by. I don't know how they even did that, but they shot that thing. And who's on the moon taking a picture of that? That's what I want to know. And so that thing shoots up, and this is, by the way, the first time in the history of rocketry that a rocket landed on a single thruster. Supposedly. Then they lost all the plans. And tell me how that thing landed with a 3,000-pound rover strapped to the side. How'd they get that thing off of there? So I got some real problems here, Lee. I got some real problems with that.
2001: A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick. Who do you think filmed the moon landing?
Same guy.
You believe that?
Yeah, probably in the Arizona desert somewhere.
So do I. The Mars rover, apparently, and this is an article I wrote for Before It's News about a week ago. Apparently, after 15 years, the Mars rover is inoperative. It is dead. Do you believe that ever went to Mars?
No, I think no. It's interesting. You can see crystal clear pictures from Mars in high definition, but we always get grainy pictures of Bigfoot. Something is wrong. Something tells me there's something wrong here.
You don't like pictures of a rover in Greenland? I mean, Mars? I mean, Greenland?
Well, I think it's been proven that the topography is strikingly similar to a place on Earth, yes.
Okay. So if they're lying about that, and since 1958, NASA has owned space, is there a possibility they're lying about anything else?
Okay, are you suggesting that a government-run agency would lie to me?
I apologize for that, and I'd like to go on an apology tour and hopefully not lose my career. Oh, wait, I don't have a career. Yeah, that's what I'm suggesting.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that various information that the government rolls out, such as Obama's birth certificate, and so many other things. Right now, they're telling me there's no crisis on the border at all, but every video out there shows hundreds of thousands of people coming across our borders. I wouldn't think the government would lie to me.
What I encourage people to do, and the whole reason I wrote the book, is to get people to think and get uncomfortable. And you have to get uncomfortable before you can really clearly think. And all I'm asking for is commonality. If you believe in chemtrails, that's your starting point. If you believe we didn't land on the moon, that's your starting point. A few months ago, my daughter, I think, was kind of on the fence about the moon landing, but I can proudly say now that my daughter and my son, who are in their 30s, don't believe we landed on the moon. But both of them are agnostic when it comes to the flat Earth. And I get it. Because if it is true that the Earth is flat, then it is without a doubt the biggest conspiratorial secret of all time that they're hiding God. And if it is true that we live on a flat plane under a dome, just saying those words right now, I feel like I'm a crazy person saying them, but I believe them. And it's only because I believe in chemtrails. I believe we didn't land on the moon. I believe the sun and the moon are the same size. I believe the sun pours its light into the moon, and that the moon generates its own cold light. And it's a self-illuminating disk, and it's not made of terra firma, and that's why you can't land on it, that it's a crystalline disk. But see, I'll stop there, because what I'm doing is I'm just opening up the meat market, and you don't believe we've landed on the moon, and that's a good enough starting point for me. I don't expect to convince anybody tonight to believe what I believe, because it took me over a year, and I'm nuts.
Well, I'm not really done here, Lee. The other thing is, they just come out with that moon movie, and they left the flag off. Everybody went for, oh, you're anti-American. That's why you left the flag seen off there. No, the real reason is they couldn't get that flag to move in what was supposed to be an atmosphereless time, or a place, so they couldn't duplicate that flag waving, which they said an astronaut was twisting back and forth. They couldn't recreate that scene because that scene never happened. That's why they left. That's why they left it out.
Yeah, and Ryan Gosling was in two of my favorite fictional movies. One is Blade Runner 2049, and the other is First Man. Both are great fictional stories. Mm-hmm. We never landed on the moon. And there's so much proof. Again, getting back to the book, this is why I wrote it for millennials, because according to a Forbes article from April of 2018 in Forbes' Mainstream, 1/3 of millennials doubt the shape of the Earth. And even Tyson, the astrophysicist, Neil deGrasse Tyson, he says now that the Earth is an oblique spheroid. And the only oblique spheroid I've ever seen is Neil Tyson.
Wow.
Think about it. He's saying now that the Earth is rounder in the middle than it is on the edges. We have no pictures of Earth except the CGI composites from NASA. Mm-hmm. They've owned space. Think about this. 1958, they send up Sputnik, and all of a sudden there's panic. Kennedy announces, we'll be the first one to go to the moon. In 69, they fictionalize the landing. Now you've got NASA saying, as we said in the beginning of the conversation, in 2024, they hope to put an unmanned vehicle on the moon. Why would they set that as a goal for 5 years from now, an unmanned vehicle? Why hasn't anyone gone back to the moon? Why can't we get any good pictures of Earth from space? I mean, those are the questions that lead me to doubt the official story. And when you think about it, I don't feel like we're rotating at 1,000 miles an hour right now. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like we're traveling at 66,000 miles around the sun. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's obvious that you have, I think you indicated you may be a believer. But what do you say to those say that whole conversation is a distraction?
Oh, I don't believe that at all. I've heard it's a psyop too. If anything, my belief in God has strengthened. And let's say, for argument's sake, that I'm completely wrong. The Earth is round. It's not a prerequisite for salvation. That's not how you get saved.
For some it is.
God doesn't ask you on Judgment Day whether you believe the Earth was flat or round. So what surprises me, Daniel, is that most people can't even have a conversation about this. I'll entertain pretty much anything if it makes sense, because all I care about is the truth. What is the truth? It's like Pilate said, what is truth? Mm-hmm. And we both know that chemtrails are real. We both know that man hasn't landed on the moon. We both know that the Earth and the sun and the moon look to be the same size. That's a good enough starting point for me. The only thing I want to do for the listener is to plant a seed and to get them to go on their own journey for truth. And that's the reason I wrote the book. There is something in this book for everyone. It's only 80 pages long, but you're going to find something in the book where you go, you know what? Maybe that's a possibility. Mm-hmm. I'm going to start my own journey and see what the heck is going on.
Well, yeah. Well, you're saying the premise is it is factually correct to say that we have been lied to and manipulated for who knows how long. We've been manipulated enough to allow babies to be born and murdered. I mean, that is for many, a large segment of population, an agreeable thing. So people can't say that they haven't been manipulated and their thoughts haven't been altered or warped, because they have. And they will end up accepting the mark of the beast. They will end up saying, yeah, it's okay to throw people who disagree or say have wild-eyed conspiracy theories like chemtrails, flat Earth, climate deniers, get them out of the way because they're hindering progress. That is the case right now. So for your point there, that is true. But let me ask you something. I do have a question though, since you seem to be knowledgeable on this subject, and you said about the sort of the CGI type of Earth view that we always get. Is there a satellite that stays in the same position to film the Earth rotating? Because I always thought that satellites were in geosynchronous orbit that rotated with the Earth. But evidently there's something out there that can float and can stand still and in a position to watch the Earth rotate. Is there something up there that's doing that?
Well, in the book, Lucifer talks about the fact that man has never achieved anything higher than low Earth orbit. And that's about 1,200 miles. Unlike some people in the movement, I do believe there are satellites, but I don't believe they're as high as they say they are. The best has only been what they call an LEO, which is a low Earth orbit. It's 1,200 miles, and a high Earth orbit is unobtainable because if you do believe in the flat Earth, then you believe there's a dome about 3,500 miles high,
Mm-hmm.
and that the sun and the moon are underneath it, and they're localized. But they don't. I mean, there is no geosynchronous orbit with these satellites because they would have shown the Earth. And then people will go, well, what about ISIS? And, they show the curvature of the Earth. Well, that's just a fisheye lens. And they've shown this with the balloons they've sent up at 125,000 feet. I think the hardest thing to get your head around with this whole flat Earth deal is curvature. I live on the coast of Florida, and you can literally see boats go over the horizon, and it appears to be curvature. But if you believe in the flat Earth, as I do, what that really is what they call the vanishing line of perspective from your point of view. In other words, the flat horizon changes in relation to your vantage point. If you're standing on the beach and you see a boat go over the horizon, if you were to rise up, that is 500 to 1,000 feet, that boat would come back into view. And it would continue the higher you get till eventually you can see the entire plane, but no one has ever gone up that high and seen it without a fisheye lens.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the whole issue of Antarctica. What is Antarctica? And that's a whole other discussion.
Mm-hmm. Well, you realize I call this program The Edge because we're actually on the edge of the flat Earth. So hopefully some cat won't knock us off. And that's the problem right there. Because if a cat sees something on a ledge, it's going to knock it off.
I've seen that.
That is proof of flat Earth right there. We got a number of questions that come in. By the way, if you believe in the flat Earth, let's just say, do you also believe that there's no hollow Earth? Then, because if there was, you would go out in space.
I don't know. Yeah, that's a great question. I have no idea.
All right, another conspiracy.
The hollow Earth. I'm having a hard enough time, Daniel, believing the Earth is flat. I do believe it's flat, but every time I say it, I have a hard time with it because for 59 years, I believe I've been programmed to believe it's round.
Lee,
at this point, I don't know, and I really haven't spent much time checking into it because boy, that one really sounds crazy, and that's from a guy who believes in flat Earth.
Lee, I gotta ask: Are you under a doctor's care right now?
Yes, I am. These are the drugs I'm on: Prozac, fentanyl, Budweiser, and heroin.
Wow! Hey man, give me a glass of that, dude. Nobody knows what I got in my cup. I don't know if you ever watched this show, but I have a mysterious cup. It's got our logo on there, but I'm not always saying there's coffee in there. Who knows? There could be anything in that cup. Well, one more quick conspiracy. See where you're at. Was that a weather balloon that crashed in Roswell?
I have no idea. I think it was Dean Martin and part of the Rat Pack.
All right. Well, let's get to this question here. Conspiracy fact guy out of the live chat. How thick is this flat Earth?
I have no idea. I do believe that there's 3,500 miles between the surface of the Earth and the dome above us, and hell, the abyss, is 3,600 miles below us. And you want to know where I got that from?
Sure.
I have no idea.
Oh.
I have no idea. It's just, there's a great line in Prometheus where the woman says, I believe because I choose to believe it. And for some reason, that is on my hard drive, and that is, I just believe that to be true.
We got a question from Chuck. Chuck lives in Florida, and he says, Lee, where about in Florida do you live?
I'm certainly not going to tell you, Chuck, except that it's near the ocean.
Now, see, Chuck, I believe he lives in Florida, which is a relatively flat state, so he would probably agree with you, because isn't Florida pretty flat? There's no mountains down there, are they?
It actually is the flattest state, I believe. And, just to preface the book, it's not just about flat Earth, and I know that's what gets everyone's attention, but it's also about the Nephilim. It's about Kabbalah, Freemasonry, numerology, alchemy. I spent a year studying black magic and the occult,
Whoa.
in order to get a full picture of how Lucifer would present this. So I basically took the Bible, the book of Enoch, and a few occultic type books, put them all together, and had him narrate how the structure of the universe is comprised from his point of view.
All right, here's another question for you. This is from one of our viewers. Do you believe that we time travel?
If you're a Christian, and I am, are you a Christian, Daniel?
Yes.
Okay. Then you believe that Jesus Christ was the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Yeah, right.
In much the same way, it says in Scripture that God knew you before the foundation of the earth. So from that perspective, we have always been, and this is again my belief, we have always been eternal beings. And when Adam and Eve were in the garden, and again, I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat for this one, Daniel.
Okay.
I believe they had what is known as a triple helix DNA.
Okay.
Right now, man has a double helix DNA, 2/3, 666. The mark, it's not the mark of the beast, it's the mark of man. Man is 2/3 of what he should be. In the garden, Adam and Eve were a triple helix DNA, and they could telecommunicate with God, telepathy, and they could transcend all 10 heavens. Another thing I learned while studying the book of Enoch, that there are in fact 10 heavens and not 3, and that God actually resides on the 10th heaven. And this correlates to what is known as string theory. And I do believe in superstring theory that everything is the result of vibrations, and there are 10 multiverses, or if you're a Christian, you would call them 10 heavens. So yeah, I believe that we have always been eternal. And I also believe that the moment of conception, a soul is created by the Lord. And the moment that a man and a woman create a human, that moment they are a human being. And that if they are aborted, that the Lord literally rebuilds their body in heaven.
What is that transference of initial life? I mean, obviously you have a sperm going into an egg. Where is this life? What is this life thing that comes in and makes it alive?
God.
Right.
And how he does it, I have no idea. How the earth is flat, I have no idea. The one thing I have learned from all of this studying, I have no idea. Because if any of this is true, Daniel, how can you not believe in God? The one thing I want to leave with the listener is this. The heliocentric model is an atheistic model because the fruit from it is hopelessness. We're rotating around nothing, going nowhere. Nothing has any meaning. But if the earth is flat, then we must be very important to God because we're the center of the universe. And I believe that this earth is the center of the universe and that we are incredibly important to God and we are special. We're not insignificant. And isn't it ironic that the ones that believe the most in the heliocentric theory are Christians and astrophysicists? These are the same astrophysicists that believe in evolution. Christians will say, did we evolve from monkeys? No, of course not. Do we live on a round ball going around the sun? Of course we agree with the astrophysicists. Who's your bedfellow? Either you're all in or you're all out.
Wow. All right, let's get to another question. What are UFOs?
I believe there are two types of UFOs. One, most UFOs are in fact military. I believe that the military-industrial complex is 10 to 20 years at least ahead of the technology that they're revealing. All this stuff with Roswell, Area 51, I believe that the majority of it is military equipment. And I also believe, put your tinfoil hat back on, is that these interdimensional beings are actually giving this technology, this knowledge to man, and is showing them how to build this machinery, these anti-gravity machines that seem to just move at an incredible speed. And there's no doubt there's UFOs, but I believe that the majority of it is from the military-industrial complex, but the knowledge to build those machines was given to us by interdimensional beings, which are known as the Nephilim, the Dark Angels, demons. principalities.
Mm-hmm. Are they the ones given giving us the technology to build AI?
Yes.
So they're giving us technology that they will eventually use to take us over.
Yes, and that's what
Bastards.
panspermia is. Panspermia is the idea that our alien overlords seeded the planet and they've been watching us. And at some point, when a crisis comes, the crisis, economic war, whatever it takes, they're going to arrive. And that's the moment of disclosure where they say, we are all things to all men. We are Christ, we are Buddha. And
Mm-hmm.
that is the delusion. I believe that's the strong delusion that the Lord sends to the world, that they will believe that these alien overlords are, in fact, our creators, which leads to the mark of the beast and the systemic changing of man's DNA from a double helix to a triple helix, reflecting the light bearer. And it's interesting, Daniel, in the Bible, it also talks about once you receive the mark, you cannot be redeemed. And I always wondered, I thought, well, is that Old Testament God talking? You know, what if someone repents, they take the mark and they want to take it out? Why can't they be saved after that? And I now believe that the reason they can't be saved after they take the mark is that their DNA changes and that they actually reflect the image of Lucifer as opposed to reflecting the image of God. Unlike the angels, unlike Lucifer, unlike demons, we are made in God's image.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Demons, dark angels, Lucifer, they're not. They're a different type of creation. But once man accepts that mark of the beast and their systemic DNA is changed, they will reflect the light bearer and they will no longer reflect God and they will be disqualified for salvation.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's also something to the fact that somebody suggested that when you say get to heaven, when you die and move on, if your DNA has been altered, it's almost like a check. You know, are you still human? Because you know in the book of Genesis, where the great flood, he said that they were all corrupt except for Noah and his family. It seems to me that all their DNA was changed. I wonder if that is a check that when you get to heaven, sort of at the gate, because I see a gate in heaven, they only allow certain people in, but hell, there is no gate, and everybody comes in. You know, kind of like United States border. But what do you think about that?
Well, let me read just a paragraph from chapter 6 called the Nephilim. Before the fall, Adam and Eve reflected the Ancient of Days' perfect triple helix DNA genome comb, wearing their spirits externally and bodies internally. After their expulsion from Eden, both were downgraded to a perishable double helix DNA genome comb, displaying their bodies externally and their spirits internally. So you're right. There's going to be a check. And it's interesting that our movies, the predictive programming in the book of Eli, a great movie with Denzel Washington, they look at his hand to see if he was before the time when the change occurred. And it's the same thing in Blade Runner 2049 with the replicants. They have a test to determine whether they are human or not. But I believe the day is coming very, very soon when AI is going to be very hard to distinguish from a human being. And so all of this is coming, and it's coming a lot quicker than people realize.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with you there. Chuck in Florida again, because you know you're a Florida bud, so he wants to know: have you ever flown around the flat Earth?
No. But here's an interesting point, and this tags into Antarctica. You know, the idea, if you believe in flat Earth, is that we are surrounded by a 60,000 mile round ice wall, and that holds in all the oceans. And I know, smoke them if you got them. I know it sounds crazy. But they also say that they fly over Antarctica. They have flights from Australia to Antarctica, and that's true, but they just skim the coast. My question is, why is it that we are not allowed to fly over the South Pole? And the reason is, again, back in the 1950s, they signed what is known as the Antarctica Treaty. And all the nations of the world agreed that no one is allowed to fly over the South Pole. Why is that still in effect?
What about all this talk about government officials and celebrities going down to Antarctica?
Well, there's some people that believe that they have bases there. if I were to do a bit of conjecture as opposed to the stuff that I believe in, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if they're not dealing with the modern day Nephilim. Think about
Mm-hmm.
this. In the book of Genesis, it talks about, and actually Jesus talked about it, what will be a sign of the end of the times? It'll be as it was in the days of Noah.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like in the days of Noah? The earth was corrupted with the Nephilim. The dark angels, the watchers, came down, 200 of them, on Mount Hermon, and then they had sex with these women. It talks in the Bible about how angels can take on the form of men. So these angels take on the form of men and they have sex with women. They produce a race of giants. The systemic DNA is corrupted. The Lord floods the earth, and that period of time is coming back right now. And I think that the military industrial complex, whether it's the United States or China or whoever, is getting this technology from these interdimensional beings, perhaps on these bases in Antarctica or in other places around the world in secret labs. But they are making chimeras, which are hybrid human animals. They are making these bastardized human beings that are half human and half dark angel. And they are coming back. And I honestly believe that Lucifer, the Antichrist, is going to, in fact, be a hybrid. And that'll be part of the selling point, because after he is assassinated and rises from the dead, that is his proof that you too can have eternal life and never die.
Yeah, my wife and I just watched a movie called The Replicants with Keanu Reeves, and in that case, they were able to transfer the soul, so to speak, or the essence of a human into a machine. And I think the Bible does say that man shall, yeah, and you mentioned it, that they shall seek death and not find it. Well, if you get impregnated into a machine, then if your machine breaks, they simply upload you to another machine, and you couldn't die if you wanted to. They just keep uploading you.
Yeah, that's what, Ray Kurzweil is the father of the singularity. And just for the listener to clarify what we're talking about, the idea of the singularity, and Elon Musk is into this. He owns a company, Neural Lace.
And he's
The
one
idea,
freaky looking
go ahead.
dude too, man. Right there, he looks like a replicant of something. But go
Well,
ahead.
it's interesting. He's a strange cat because
Yeah,
he's brilliant,
he's a doper
but
too,
at
man.
this but at the same time, yeah, I know. I saw him smoking a doobie with Joe Rogan. Um, So
And it was good
anyway,
stuff,
the
yeah.
idea with a singularity is that you upload your mind and your consciousness
Mm-hmm.
into a machine, and then that's uploaded into an avatar. There's a new movie out called Alita, Battle Angel, and it's produced by James Cameron, and he's the guy who
Mm-hmm.
brought us Avatar,
Mm-hmm.
which was kind of
And
that first
aliens.
introduction of the Nephilim. And in Alita, this Battle Angel, this scientist is able to preserve her mind and give her a new body. It's just like Ghost in the Machine with Scarlett Johansson. The idea of uploading your mind into a machine and obtaining eternal life. And what
Mm-hmm.
these people want, what this spirit of Antichrist is to bypass death, to not pay the penalty for the wages of sin,
Mm-hmm.
and to become eternal
Mm-hmm.
from God.
Mm-hmm.
And once you do that, you do become a God. But that's where it's going to fail.
Ali, if they upload the mind, I would be one to believe that the mind is separate than the soul or maybe the spirit. Man, I have a little trouble differentiating the two. Maybe they're the same, but still, I mean, your mind appears to be the organic matter that contains memories that are impregnated on various synapses, various things, and the totality of your experiences in life are in there, categorized or logged in an organic matter format. So I could see how they could say extract that, because I believe they now have machines that can actually see your thoughts. If they take that and they put that in a machine, if that said person had a soul that is separate, where does that go?
Well, I think about the scripture that says the Lord can even cut between the soul and
And
the
the marrow.
spirit.
Yeah.
And getting back to that conversation we had about the sun pouring its light into the moon. It's so structured and exact. We know when the sun will rise and when it will set exactly any place in the world. I just don't think it's going to work. And if it does work, it's going to be corrupted, because who you really are isn't going to be uploaded into that machine. There's going to be a variance. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand how that can be done, because to me, how do you quantify the soul, your will, and your emotions. How do you quantify your spirit? It's not tangible, it's intangible, it's spiritual. So, unless you have the assistance of demons or interdimensional beings, dark angels, you're not going to be able to do it. So, I think the one ingredient here, Daniel, is that perhaps these demonic spirits, dark angels, and principalities will try and help to facilitate the transference of the spirit and soul into the machine. That's the only way I can see it being done. But once that's done, you'll be a corrupted image still reflecting the image of Lucifer. So I think even
Right.
if they
I can
were
see that.
successful, the end product, you would no longer reflect God. You would still reflect Lucifer because of what you have done.
So that image, that the form or whatever, they say about aliens or alien hybrids when they're abducting people, that when they experiment on people, when people are shrieking in pain, they're getting probed in every orifice with various tools of such, that they're screaming in terror and fear and pain, but the abductors don't have any emotion whatsoever. In fact, they actually may look at that person with curiosity, with questioning, if any emotion is displayed. But in most cases, they say there is none. Wouldn't those, say, gray aliens or those aliens be the type of thing that would be left off? So let's just say when you upload somebody's consciousness, if there is no soul attached, you would become an emotionless, drone-like alien creature that just has memories, but wouldn't mind murdering or carrying out the will of their father, the devil, so to speak, in this case here. But they would that would be all they would be.
In the occultic circles, there is something known as astral projection. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
Astral projection is the ability to leave your body and to go to a different location. In other words, if I were to leave my body tonight, I could go to Texas and haunt a house. You do that with the assistance of a demon. And it is only through the willing compliance, your own free will of saying, yes, I will let you take control of my body. I will let you take control of my soul and my mind. And I want to do this, this, and this. And again, it comes down to a choice, like you were asking earlier about, will people have the mark forced on them? No, they will not. They will have a choice. You can take the mark or we'll kill you. That's your choice. And it's the same thing with the singularity and transhumanism. I believe there's going to come a moment where you will know that the only way for this to be completed is you need the assistance of a demon, and you must sign your will over to that demon. And it's the same thing with black magicians. For a period of time on this earth, the demon serves the magician. And the contractual agreement is after death that the person serves the demon. And I'm not making that up from the book of Enoch. That's from occultic writing. So, Satan has his own Bible and the Lord has his Bible. When you study them together with the book of Enoch, you get a pretty good overview of what's going on, not only in the material world, but more importantly in the spiritual world, which I believe is much more real than this temporary place we're living in right now.
Now, yeah, again, that is one thing I am absolutely convinced of, that the things that are seen are not as real as the things that are not seen. There seems to be a show going along the side of reality, and the Bible says the things that are made were made by those things which are not. So yeah, and I would think in that realm and dimension, there's a whole lot of things going on.
It's amazing. It really is. And I've gone through deliverance. I've had people pray for me, and I've had spirits come out of me as a Christian. And I've prayed for people, and they've had spirits come out of them. And it's not me doing it, it's the Lord. But I've been on both sides of it. I remember I was at a church, this is back in 1994, and the pastor's brother, who had cerebral palsy, just came up to me out of nowhere and just put his hand on my chest. And I remember going down like a sack of potatoes and coming up and just feeling like this wet blanket had been lifted from my life. And what it was a spirit of depression that had been cast out of me. So when you think about where we live, and Lucifer talks about it in Morning Star's Tale, we live in the first heaven of the third dimension. In other words, material world. And as you transcend the different dimensions or the different heavens, you get a different perspective. It was Einstein, who wasn't a Christian, who said once you achieve the speed of light, which is 186,000 miles a second, you actually bypass death because time can't catch up with you. And I'll give you one more thought, and this is really the crux of the book and what the transhumanist singularity movement is all about. What they want to do, and this ties in with CERN and the Large Hadron Collider.
Mm-hmm.
The Large Hadron Collider was built, get your tinfoil hat on, was built to go back in time and to tear apart the fabric of time and to kill God.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is that if you destroy time, you eliminate judgment. Satan knows that his time is coming when he'll be judged and cast into the lake of fire, along with the Antichrist and the false prophet.
Mm-hmm.
But if he can eliminate time, he can eliminate the moment when he wanted to be God and was cast out of heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And by eliminating time, he believes that he can kill God. And by killing God, he'll eliminate judgment on man. So in the very beginning of the book, I have a quote from Francis Bacon, and it's the very beginning of the book, chapter 1, and it says, "The desire of power in excess caused the angels to fall. The desire of knowledge in excess caused man to fall." So what Satan wants to do is to partner with man and somehow kill God, which will eliminate his judgment and eliminate man's judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a mutual goal that he sees for himself and man. Of course, when that is accomplished, which it won't be, he'll just turn on man because he can't be trusted.
Well, I think that's an interesting viewpoint there. I mean, certainly, and that's the whole point of Terminator. Terminator was sent back in time to kill John Connor. And because John Connor could have been killed, then, or Sarah Connor, was it Sarah Connor, I think? To go back in time to kill him so that John Connor wouldn't be born, who led the resistance against Skynet. So there is that. And then, of course, the corresponding scripture is it said, had they known they crucified the Son of God, they wouldn't have done it. But they made a mistake there and crucified him. I'm thinking if they didn't crucify him, then salvation would not have come to man. So it makes sense that they would build that. And you talk about ripples in time. And I might as well get into that conspiracy. Are these attempts to go back into time to kill God, is that causing a Mandela effect? Is that our evidence of that's going on?
Well, I think what's happening is, and I've thought about this a lot and I've prayed about it. To me, the Mandela effect is the dimensions getting closer. The veil is getting very thin. The veil between what it is we can't see and what we can see is getting thinner every day. And I think people are beginning to experience things from the fourth dimension, from the spiritual dimension, in their third dimension, this dimension we live in. And so the Mandela effect to me is just the veil getting very thin between the spiritual and the physical. And again, CERN was designed to go back in time and destroy God. And if you go back to Genesis, the reason I believe Satan sent the dark angels, the 200 watchers, to have sex with women were to corrupt the seed, because he knew Jesus Christ was going to come and redeem man. But what he didn't foresee is that God took Noah, who was perfect in his generations, which only means that his double helix DNA wasn't corrupted, put him in the boat, and then once everything was dead, then they started over again. So what you're seeing is history repeating itself. The Tower of Babel is what CERN is today. CERN is a digital Tower of Babel. And man is going to ascend heaven, just like they tried to do in Babel, reach up to heaven, storm it, and take it. And there's a great line in Blade Runner 2049 where Jared Leto talks about the replicants being able to storm heaven and take back Eden. And that's what Satan wants to do. He wants to be God. He wants to be worshipped. And it's going back to the very fall of Satan as he fell like lightning from heaven.
Mm-hmm. This is interesting. The Green Deal type people out there they seem to be worshiping climate change, Green Deal, anything that's normal or natural. They're against that. They have this sort of obsession that is schizophrenic and so hateful. It just seems like a birthing of some evil entity in and of itself that's taking over a mass of the people to seem like they will be easy drones to control when this force comes on the scene.
Well, it's this whole idea of God being the demiurge, the evil God, the patriarch. And so that's why they call it Mother Earth. I love Mother Earth as opposed to the evil God of the Old Testament, the demiurge who wanted to suppress man and to keep him from being enlightened. It's all lockstep. It's the spirit of Antichrist which permeates the planet. You know, when people ask me, they go, okay, so who's behind all this? And I just say it's the spirit of Antichrist. We are in occupied territory. We are strangers in a strange land. And if you're a Christian and you don't feel uncomfortable, then you're not a Christian, because this is not our home. You are not supposed to be comfortable here. This is a war zone, and you either get in the war or you'll become part of the fodder.
Well, that's very interesting you said that. I think I mentioned about a Facebook meme that I put up there, you know, about in the first hour. I said, you know, by the way, they're murdering live babies. Now go ahead and return to your funny cat videos. And that's basically the same thing. What I'm saying, if you're not uneasy and you're trying to create a life where you don't want to know about that, then you're going to be one of the you're going to be one of the controlled. You're going to be easily swayed. You're going to be one that, if it were possible, you would be deceived, and maybe you already are, because if your conscience is not seared at that point, the horror of what's going on, you know, just putting it out of your mind and not saying anything about it doesn't make it go away. And you know, I'm with you. There's a battle raging out there. Lee Austin, we're getting near the end of the broadcast, talking about Morning Star's Tale. Tell us a little bit more about the book, where people can get it.
Sure. It's called Morning Star's Tale, and it's spelled T-A-L-E. It's a play on words, Morning Star's Tale. You can purchase it at Amazon. You can purchase it at Barnes & Noble, Smashwords. You can also go to my website, which is morningstarstale.com. You can get the ebook, or you can get the hard copy. Again, Amazon or Barnes & Noble, Morning Star's Tale. And it's pretty much everything we've been talking about tonight and a little bit more.
All right, Lee Austin, appreciate you coming on the Edge Television broadcast. Can we have you on again sometime?
Thank you so much, Daniel. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and you're a terrific host, asking great questions. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks for coming on the show.